Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, this podcast is for you. Recruiting is a battlefield where the rules keep changing and the chaos never stops. As the world shifted to remote work, real connection and unfiltered learning have never been more urgent. This isn't just a podcast, it's your survival guide. Welcome to the revolution, Your Digital Bullpen.
Hey, Paul.
Hey,
how are ya?
What's up, Mirna?
Oh my God, thank you so
great
much.
to have you.
It's so good to have you on Your Digital Bullpen. Super excited to have Rick Frankovits with us, who Mirna and I have worked with and known for a while, and such an impressive career you've had. Super excited to jump in today. But before you do, remember that this is a community, and anybody watching, remember to share that, smash that like button, share the episode, put it on your socials so we can grow our community. We're super excited to have Rick part of our Digital Bullpen family today, and I can't wait to introduce you. So those who don't know the famous Rick Frankovits, he is just a fantastic seasoned executive in the industry. Rick, you have 20 years experience in the field, which is crazy, 20 plus. We're just going to say 20 plus. He has held leadership roles in huge firms like LHH, Vaco, Robert Half. Extensive experience encompassing talent acquisition, executive search, contingent workforce solutions across many different industries. Based in New York, metropolitan area, which I still haven't been to New York, Rick. I know it's crazy. You have been recognized so many times for your insight, building your high-performing teams. Your teams are so committed to you, and you are committed to delivering tailored staffing solutions that align with clients and business objectives. So I'm super excited. Thank you so much for being on our little podcast today.
Yes, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, Rick,
one thing Paul didn't mention that I'm going to mention, because I was super fortunate to be part of this great group of trainers that traveled throughout the US to do masterclass training.
Yes.
And that's really where I got a chance to really spend some one-on-one time with Rick. And he does a fantastic job when it comes to training and development, which is the reason I know his teams were so successful. So welcome, Rick.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. And that was a lot of fun. Those masterclass trainings were great.
And we had some leadership meetings too. And I believe we had a cooking class one, didn't we? That we all went and cooked pasta or something.
We did, and we didn't get food poisoning, which was a big win.
We did it. And Rick is super competitive, unless you know. He is very competitive. So he's not the one that's going to sit in the back. He is going to keep it moving. Well, our awesome Rick, you've had a very long career in staffing. And obviously with LHH, some recent other roles, and now you're exploring your next chapter. I want to know, first off, who tricked you into getting into recruiting? How'd you get in here in the first place? And then tell us about your career and how you got here today.
Yeah, so great question. So like most people, I fell into recruiting. I was working for a third-party logistics firm. I had been an accountant before that, and I was trying to find what my true calling was. And someone I worked with said, "You should be a recruiter. You'd be great at it." And I said, "What is recruiting? I don't even know what that means." And sure enough, I did some homework and ended up landing at Robert Half as my first job. Yeah. And the rest is really history.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, so obviously wild. Robert Half, LHH, a couple others. So I'll add on to that. So what has kept you, after all the years, keeps you connected to the industry? Why stay in it?
So I think it's an industry that either you love it or you hate it. There's really no in between. And I think once it gets in your blood, if you truly love it, it's just something that it's a driving force in your life. So I think, not to sound too cheesy, I think it's an opportunity to make unlimited earning potential, which I think is always something that's important to me. One of the great fringe benefits is you literally change people's lives. People in dead-end jobs or have just lost their jobs and looking for that next step in their career, and being able to give them guidance and direction, and then having a relationship in a sales environment where that person then can potentially become your client that buys from you. And it becomes kind of this circle of life that you, as you continue to do more and more, becomes more fun, and you really see the impact that you have on people. And it's pretty amazing.
Oh my God, the circle of life just came on in my head because I just watched Mufasa. We were talking about that.
Oh, we're just
circle of life. And it is. I mean, something to be said for that. There's definitely, this cyclical nature to what we do here.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, and what I love about Rick is one of his big passions is building teams.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of share with us, because a lot of leaders can be super successful if they have like a great team.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have to build a team in staffing, that can be a little tricky. So kind of walk us through what's made you so successful in building those teams as well as leading those teams, Rick.
So great question. So I think when it comes to building teams, I've learned how to build teams in part by trial and error, but more importantly, by working for and working with great leaders. So people like yourselves that, we've obviously worked together. And I think it's taking best practices and things that really work and then embracing those, and that trial and error. When you make a mistake, that's okay, but learn from that mistake and try not to make it again. I think the key is really identifying people that kind of have that makeup or that DNA that will be successful in staffing and want to work in this type of environment. It is not for the faint of heart, as we know. It is. We eat our young. It's a tough business.
More Lion King stuff. Come on.
So I think the key is knowing what is that hiring profile you're looking for, and identifying that first, building out that profile, and then as you're interview to that profile to make sure that you're checking all the boxes in the candidates you're interviewing. And don't fall in love with people that you like them very much, but they're not going to be the right fit in staffing, but you're going to give them a chance anyway. It's really sticking to your guns and making sure that you're hiring the person that has the greatest likelihood for success in the role. I think that's the key.
Yeah.
What does that person look like? Tell me about what if I'm a new manager and I'm looking for somebody to hire, because I remember as a young manager, I hired some people. I was like, oh, I really like them, and then crash and burn. I can't tell you how many times I hired the wrong person. So it would have been nice to have a little bit of a
cheat sheet.
Yeah, if you will, on kind of what if you had to write it down with all those years experience, what are some non-negotiables, and then other things that you're like, this is coachable?
Yeah. So I think for me, the number one quality that I look for in a prospective hire is drive. Do they have drive? And it's a little difficult to identify how do they really have drive and how much drive do they have? Because in this business, as you know, that first year is a grind. That's where we see most of the washout and most of the people leaving the industry, because they say, yes, I can make a certain number of phone calls. I can send a certain number of emails. I can go to a certain number of meetings. But when you're doing it day in and day out, it can get really, really deflating and defeating. And it can really beat you up, and it takes a toll on your self-esteem.
Yeah.
So I think it's making sure it's someone who's got that tenacity and that drive. And they understand they're going to get a lot of no's, and that's okay. That's part of building the relationship. And it's about building long-term relationships. So I think drive for me is always the number one quality. And then to dig a little deeper on what type of drive do they have is asking questions like, what motivates you? And quite often the answer is money. And then it's, okay, that's great. What are you willing to do to make money? Give me some examples of what you've done that was really difficult to make money.
I like that.
Right. Or even early on in their life, before they turned 18 years old, what was their biggest accomplishment? Did they work when they were going to school, when they were going to high school, or did they come from a family that didn't have a lot of money that they had to start supporting themselves?
That scrappy mentality, right?
Scrappy is a great word. Scrappy is a great quality to have in this business.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, because I think sometimes when we're in this industry and somebody's, what motivates you? You're like, oh, I like to make money. They're like, yeah, me too. But it's that deeper dive, right? How you kind of figure out what does that mean to you? And well, tell me what was the most difficult thing you did making money, right? And they'll be like, yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys remember the story of Joe Hamill and some of his jobs before he got into staffing. But, he's a guy that he could tell you some funny stories, but he was money motivated and did some pretty interesting jobs to make money. And I thought, wow, that's a guy that's got tremendous drive.
Little Joe Hamill. God love him. Yeah.
That name is a blast from the past, and I love that. He was also somebody that traveled with us.
And he's doing great. He's excelling at LHS. Yeah.
That's
He is.
awesome.
He's been very successful. He's had many different roles in the organization throughout his career, and just has been always a very successful guy because he's got that drive and that grit, and he just gets it done. And he's, great guy.
Awesome.
Yes. So something, obviously having a profile, right? Like knowing what you have to like dive into to get the information that you need. But walk us through, I mean, Paul mentioned he's made some bad hiring. I know I personally have, and it can have such a big impact on the team, right? But walk us through a bad hiring decision that you made and what you learned from it.
So I think that's a great question. I think early on in my career, I was very much about selling myself and selling the company to get people to want to come to work for me. And in doing that, I didn't dig deep enough to find out if they were the right person or not. And I was just so excited to get them hired and get them on the team.
Yes.
So I think it's really about doing that deeper dive and also being fully transparent about just how difficult it is to be successful in this business and the amount of work that it takes. This is not an overnight success story. It takes time. This is years in the making. So I think it's important that you're fully transparent with potential hires to say, I want to give you kind of a snapshot of what that first year is going to look like. It's going to be a grind. You're going to feel like you're getting, knocked down and kicked, and it's really tough. Do you have the intestinal fortitude to just continue driving through that? And just know that if you continue to do the things that I'm telling you to do, you're going to have success. But you have to be fully committed to doing those and really commit to yourself that for the first year, no matter what happens, you're not going to give up. Because if you don't give yourself at least 1 year of like your foot on the gas and no brakes, it's going to be really hard to be successful in the business.
Well, in reality, like the first year is the hardest, but from 0, in my personal opinion, to year 3 is really when, if you're going to make it you can make it past those 3 years. Because then by then you've had, some good relationship building, you've had success making the placements, you can kind of leverage your network, you've built out that network. But really from 0 to 3 years is the toughest in my experience. And that's assuming you're either recruiting or just sales, but being, a full desk, that kind of brings a different element to the success of that desk.
100%, because you're learning both sides of the business, not only the candidate recruitment side, but also the client development side. And so you're really learning 2 unique skill sets that eventually will marry and you'll benefit from. But it's a heavy lift in the first 1 to 3 years, no question.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that. I think, Myrna, too, I was thinking about why 3 years as you're saying that, because we've all agreed with, like, if you get 3 years, you start to, I think first year, something clicks. And then 3 years later, like, you start to really feel the success, I think, consistently.
Yes.
And I think it's like that 3 year mark is when you start having those cyclical clients come back and those candidates come back and you're doing that work. And then you start to feel the relationship oriented part of the recruiting and not just the transactional part. But speaking about that, like you talked a little bit, Rick, about coaching and mentoring, right? And like, obviously that year 1 is just making sure they don't quit, right? Like that's just step 1. And we've all had it happen. But what is your approach to coaching and mentoring recruiters? Like if you had to say Rick Frankovits, like School of Recruiting, what would it look like?
So I think it really starts in the interview process before you hire the person. And again, it's that full transparency of this is what you can expect. And don't tiptoe around it. Don't sugarcoat it. Give it to them straight, almost to the point of trying to talk them out of that. So if they're on the fence, they're going to say, you know what, maybe this isn't for me, because you're going to save each other a whole lot of headache down the line. Having those tough conversations about why it isn't working out. So I think it's about being fully transparent of what does the job entail? What does a day in the life of a recruiter look like? Business development or recruiter or full desk? And being really, really honest about that. And then having them get in the mindset of explaining why they would be a good fit and why this is something that's exciting to them. I think it's also important to really have a thorough and all-encompassing training program. And whether you're hiring people from within the industry with some experience or someone completely outside of the industry with no experience, is really giving them the tools to be successful and reinforcing those tools, because you can't expect people to be successful if you haven't given them the tools to be successul. And then in addition to that is the accountability piece of, okay, you know how to do these things. We've worked on them. We've trained them. We've done the role plays. Now you have to actually do the work. And it's the accountability of what are the activities that you're going to do that are going to drive your business? Yeah. And are you going to hold yourself accountable to meeting those KPIs or those activities that are going to make you successful?
Yep. I want to dive into that a little bit deeper, because one of the things I have noticed, and it's more and more now, I think, in different people, different ways of looking at how to be managed. And I think the younger generation, maybe even some people nowadays, they look at what we do in those weekly KPIs and that accountability as micromanaging. I've heard about people that say, I don't want to be micromanaged, right? Like, tell me about your view on that and how you would explain to somebody the difference between what we do and micromanagement.
So listen, you can call it whatever you want, but at the end of the day,
there's the New York. There's the New York. Call it what you want, but
right? Here's the reality. Think about people that are professionals, right? Let's talk about sports professionals. If you play a sport, let's say you're a baseball player, you have fielding practice. You work on throwing, you work on catching, you work on batting, you have special coaches, you have nutritionists, you have strength and conditioning coaches, you do all of these things to improve your game. There's all these little components that make you a professional baseball player. And so I think of it in terms of, if you're going to be a professional recruiter, you have to be good at recruiting. You have to be good at building rapport. You have to be good at being a detective and doing investigative work. There's so many different things that make us successful in this business. And so I like to use the analogy of, if you're a professional sports player, you don't get there by not practicing and fine tuning all of the skills that make you that elite athlete. So in order for someone to be an elite athlete in recruiting, you have to put the work in. And really those KPIs it's like batting practice. It's like pitching practice.
It's those stats. Yeah. It's the stat. We look at a sports person and we rank them based off every game. They look at their stats. It's like every week you look at your stats. How did I do? How did I perform? Your retrospective each week. And it's that 1% matter mentality. And so, but if you can't measure it and be held accountable, you're never going to get better. So I love that analogy.
Yep, 100%. And I think about a baseball player gets into a hitting slump. What do? They go to the batting cage and they work on their swing. They fine tune the basics and the mechanics. And it's the same thing we do in recruiting, right? We go through a period where there's no counteroffer issues, right? Because the market's, it's moving, everything's good. And then at certain times, counteroffers are everywhere and you're dealing with them all the time. And people are like, I know how to, overcome that objection. But then they forget to use it. They stop asking those questions. So let me go, let's go back to the basics. Let's talk about, how do we deal with a counteroffer situation? How do we handle that? What's the process there? So it's always back to the basics for me.
Well, and something too, and I know Paul and I talk about this so much, but like working backwards, right? Like, if you're coaching me, Rick, and we have information to use, it's like, oh, well, you're doing great on interviews. I can tell you've been staying on top of interviews. But then you start diving in. And to your point, maybe it's just like a tiny tweak that we need to do, whether it's through the interview process, the sales process. But if you're giving yourself enough opportunity to have those conversations, then somebody like Rick can come in and say, hey, you're doing all the right things. That's why you're getting here. But now we just have to tweak this, and maybe instead of saying that, we turn it into like an open-ended question. And in my experience, when people feel micromanaged, it's because they're struggling with the activity and maybe not understanding why the activity matters or why a leader looks at that activity so closely versus like, hey, we're trying to understand where we need to spend a little bit more time with you.
100%. And that's a great point, Myrna. I like to take the approach of, I am your coach, right? I'm here to your mentor. I'm here to help you be successful. I'm not here to beat you up because you didn't have a certain number of interviews last week, or you didn't have a certain number of client meetings last week. It's how can I help you become more efficient and more effective at your job? That's what my goal is, because I'm your coach. Right. So I need to be there to help you be the best you that you can be. And sometimes I'm going to make it a little uncomfortable, because if you're not hitting numbers you need to be, I'm going to dig in and say, why is that? If you're hitting your interview goal, but the number of people you're sending out to jobs, you're submitting to candidates for consideration is very low, I know I've got to go back and look at what's the quality of the candidate that you're meeting. Is it the quality that we should be expecting that you're meeting? Or do you need to raise that bar? So I think it's, to your point, it's a very linear thought process of, if there's a breakdown somewhere in that, from interview to placement, we can identify where that is and then be very strategic to go in and say, okay, this is what we need to start fixing this stuff. And again, to your point, Myrna, it's usually just small tweaks. It's not big, huge adjustments.
Yeah, I agree. And Rick's one of the best for this. Like, I'm telling you, when I saw him do his pricing training, I'm like, this is awesome. I wish everyone could get this type of training and coaching and mentoring, because everybody's going to be really good in certain aspects, but Rick is good in a lot. Kind of to add on to that, Rick, so you're building teams, right? How do you create the buy-in and that loyalty? Because I know your teams in New York were amazing. All-star winners, top performers, but there was also they'd been there for a while. You were always hiring because we were growing, but you were keeping a lot of that talent internally. How did you get that buy-in?
So I think it's really about creating a culture of, we want to build a team and make it the best team. And the only way we can do that is by working together as a team. So it's really staying away from hiring jerks and people that are those lone wolves that want to be the big producers. And, and again, coming from some of the firms that I've worked with in the past, that was encouraged. They wanted people to be jerks and top producers and kind of that, walking around.
Step on anybody to get there, right? Yeah.
Right. And I think, listen, it can work in some situations, but I think if you're thinking long-term and you really want to build a solid team, you can't hire those jerks, because they will turn that culture so toxic so quickly, and you can't build around that. So it's really making sure that you've got people that are rowing in the same direction. And again, during that hiring process, talking about collaboration and being a team, and also having clear rules, black and white, of candidate ownership, client ownership, really making sure that everyone understands what the rules are and we all play within the rules. And there's no special exceptions because you're a big biller, or because the boss likes you, or you're related to the boss, or something like that. So I think it's the key. And then also, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Paul, is also being side by side with people. It's a player coach role. You got to get in the trenches with them. If the client's upset, go take a punch in the nose for your people. If you're doing a great job, go to the client and thank them for that in front of the people you're working with. It's buying into that. And I think that's huge. It sends the message, a great message. Got people.
It's crazy, Rick. You are one of the nicest guys. People think that they have to be a hard ass leader and in order to lead successful teams. And you're even apologizing for interrupting me. You are just the nicest guy. Very just
so kind.
You're so kind.
Thank you.
But I want to dive into that, because we've all worked for great leaders, but we've all seen how bad leaders and sometimes business owners can get in the way of their own companies excelling. So how have you seen leaders actually prevent the growth of their company, or prevent people from wanting to be there? Because we've all been there.
So I think the biggest thing with that is really it's a company owner or leader saying, this is our mission, this is our vision, this is what our goal, this is the direction we're going in. I want everybody on board. And then everything that they do is completely opposite of what they say they want to do. And it's almost like what you're doing is speaking so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying, because it's a mixed message and nobody knows what direction we're supposed to go in. The other thing too is constantly changing priorities, as we sort of as flavor of the week. What's the flavor of the week? I think if you don't
have we downgraded to weekly flavors? I thought we brought monthly flavors.
I've been in both, and it's really challenging. And I'll give a shout out to David Alexander, who is probably one of the greatest leaders I've ever worked with, who had every year we had 3 basic areas of focus. And for the entire year, that's what we focused on. And we would dig a little deep. We would focus on different things. We would tweak them, but we had a clear agenda, clear marching order of what we were doing. And it wasn't a flavor of the week, which people, they don't even know what they're doing at that point. Every week it's a different, every month it's a different thing. So I think it's about having that clear and consistent leadership and direction and messaging, followed up not just with what they're saying, but how they're supporting the teams. It just makes all the difference.
You know, Rick, I wanted to, because as you say that, I think about like, if I'm a leader and I feel like I have to change my priorities every month, it's probably because you're not focused on the right things. Like, in order to have three things you're going to focus on all year, we know that staffing has ebbs and flows. The market's going to change drastically, but that doesn't mean that your focus changes, right? Maybe what you do in that focus. So I think that there's something to be said for, you know, being retrospective. If you as the leader constantly have to every month look at your priorities and change them, that's not, especially in staffing, you've probably picked the wrong priorities.
Absolutely. That's a great point. I think the other thing too is it's sometimes take a step back and instead of saying we've got to figure it right away, like really give it some thought and make sure that once you commit to those priorities, you've done your due diligence and you know those are the priorities that are going to get you where you want to be. Yeah. And you have to stay true to that. It's just being true to what you commit to and don't be changing all the time.
And
it's confusing.
Yeah. And I don't remember if this was during like David Alexander's time, Paul, you might remember, but when we did the wildly important goals, I don't know if you were part of that, Rick.
Yes.
And it was
wig, that was under, I think Kathy came up. Didn't Kathy come up with the wig?
But I don't remember if that was like still under like David, but I remember it was just like a really good time where everybody was just like focused. But we were very smart about what levers we were focused on, right? It wasn't like something that could be affected necessarily by the ups and downs of a market, right? And what I love, I remember that video. I don't know if you guys remember it, but it was like you're
air traffic controller.
Traffic control, yes.
You know how many times, Myrna, I've done this training. I don't know. Yes, the air traffic controller.
I know, and I just love it because I literally just did it with my partner Steve because we're also kind of like it's a two-man show and we're trying to figure out like let's get this train moving and we got to focus. And I'm like, we're just going to pick two wildly important goals. And Steve's like, oh God, Myrna's going to micromanage me. And I'm like, no, we're focusing on submissions and we're focusing on this other thing. And that's all we're doing. And we don't care what else is happening in our world, but we're going to focus on that. And that is what keeps everybody excited and keeps the frustrations low. And I love that you say that, Rick, because I think we've all worked with certain leaders where, you're just moving the goalpost every time. And it makes it very hard to feel like you're winning at any time,
Yeah. And I think you said it, Rick, the goalpost becomes a basket and then it becomes like something else.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's all over the place. And I think there are some leaders that do that because they don't know what's really important and they haven't taken the time and commitment to identify what's most important. So they just keep changing and moving and changing and moving. And it's really tough to pin them down because when you say, well, what about this? And they say, well, no, we're doing all this other stuff. And it's almost like, your head is spinning. You're like, I don't even know what we're doing at this point, but I guess we're doing either everything right or everything wrong, or I don't even know. I have no idea.
And something to be said about being a leader. I don't think as a leader, you should hold yourself responsible for making those decisions. Like, I think if all of your ideas come from the top down, to me, that's a poor company. Like, your ideas should not come top down. If they're not coming from the field and the people that are every day in the trenches, and that's because that's where you get your buy-in. And I think some of the best leaders I've worked under have really elicited those ideas from the field. They massage them. They can veto a bad one, but they shouldn't make the decisions. And so it's like so many leaders feel this responsibility to, I have to come up with all of our plans. And I'm like, and that's typically where you get the chaotic leaders. And a lot of them are business owners because they're so far removed from everyday life that they're not tapped into what needs to happen. And so, I mean, even I remember Ben at VB, he was just like, I had to step back because as an owner, like I knew I was getting in people's way. And so I needed to create some leaders underneath of me that could just cause that, that veto opportunity. And it worked well.
Yeah. And that's a very insightful owner to say that of like, hey, I'm getting in the way here. Yeah. Let me take the people that I've hired, that I've entrusted my business to, who are the subject matter experts. Let me have them tell me what's going to be important here and how we can do this. I think that's really, really important. Absolutely. Yeah.
I love it. Well, one of the things you actually emphasized that, was collaboration. So we work in, cross-selling and all these different cultures. So what would you say, is one thing you want to avoid when it comes to getting those silos and drive collaboration? How do you do that in an industry? You have you have that $1 million biller, and then you have this person over here. How do you get those people to collaborate?
So I think first and foremost is to explain to them that that's part of the fabric of our culture, is we are a collaborative environment, and you have to be okay with that. If you want to be a lone wolf, it's not going to be the right place for you. And it's okay that you want to be a lone wolf, but you're not going to be successful here.
Yeah.
So I think it's about setting the playing field. And then I think it's important to explain what the benefit of collaboration and cross-selling truly is, which is the number one thing most of us get into this business is because you're going to make more money. So don't think of it in terms of you're giving something away. Think of it in terms of this is an opportunity for you to expand your network. And if you're doing business development, to leverage other relationships, build that trust, and be brought into other opportunities that you would not have been part of had you not collaborated with other people on your team. So I think it's creating the culture of this is how we do it. And someone that doesn't either has to step in line, or it's a tough conversation about, is this the right place for you?
Yeah.
I think that's really, really important. And again, everybody's on a level playing field, I think, and everybody knows what the rules are.
Yeah.
I think the rules are important because then people have those parameters, and I can think of times where those rules were sometimes gray depending on certain situations.
Who's involved?
Who's involved?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
I love giving Paul a hard time. But that is the reason, right? Because I've talked to other salespeople, and when those rules aren't in place, whether you think they're right or wrong, but there are rules in place, then people know exactly how to operate within those. And when they feel that those are changing, like commissions that are constantly changing, that really messes with people. And not understanding like the fabric of how you get paid really gets people riled up. So I don't know if you have any additional thoughts about that, Rick, but I just know how important that is.
Yeah, no, I think it's an excellent point. So, in staffing, I like to live in a world of black and white, right? We know what the rules are. We know how we handle things. We know who gets credit for what. It's all clearly spelled out. But the reality is the recruiting world is a world of gray. So much of it is gray. And I think the less gray you have and the more black and white you can make things, the better off you're going to be. Yeah. Because there's a lot of people in the recruiting business that are very smart. They're very good negotiators. They can be somewhat manipulative when they need to be.
That's our job. Yeah, we hire them to be manipulators. Yeah. In a good way.
Of course, 100%. But to think that they're not going to turn on us if they need to make a compelling argument as to why they think something should go their way, we would just be foolish. So I think it's about really just making sure that the more black and white you can have and the less gray, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah.
Agreed. Well, Rick, you've been in leadership roles, but now you're currently navigating your own job search. What's been surprising or possibly frustrating about that particular experience so far?
So I can't believe how bad recruiters are. They're terrible.
They're so, oh my God,
I love that you're saying that.
So Myrna, that's a great question. And I think what really has been interesting is just seeing how different recruiters operate, being as a candidate. And I'm working with, rec to rec recruiters. And there are some that I want to hire them when I land on my next opportunity. Yes. And there's other ones that I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. They are just horrible. They really give the industry a kind of a bad name or a bad reputation. So I think it's just the different levels of professionalism within our industry have really been surprising to me. And then I think the other thing too is it's really been interesting to see just how, being on the candidate side, just how specific some clients can be in what they're looking for. It's truly that purple squirrel. I want someone that has this specific vertical they've recruited in, and this specific geography, and this certain industry, and it gets incredibly specific in what they're looking for. And it seems to be more and more of that, and less of the bigger picture commoditized type situation.
It's funny you say that, Rick, because I'm doing a consulting role right now for an organization, and even in my conversations, I was looking at a job description with one of my my managers, and I was like, "You're looking for two different people." And how many times in staffing have we had to tell somebody? But now I'm actually internal with the company, and I'm like, "These are two different roles," and I had to explain why, and they're like, "Oh, well, you know what? We can train for this part, and let's hire for this." And I'm like, I think so many times companies, I don't know where they get their job, and sometimes they're so focused on job descriptions that it's almost to a deficit and we've had times where I've asked them, we've had to pull back and I'm like, let's make it more generic. You're actually going to not get more people applying because you're so specific. And it is, I mean, I think I've been going through my own little consulting job search for the past year. And I agree with you. There's so many bad recruiters out there. And sometimes the difference between a bad recruiter and a good recruiter is just following up. One follow-up, that's it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I am surprised at the number of people that ghost being on the candidate side. It's really, it's unsettling, to be quite honest.
It is. And so I guess based off you and what you've been going through, like what advice would you give companies trying to attract top people out there? Because I will be honest with you, the staffing industry right now as a whole is struggling. And I think it's due to, the current, what's happening in the government, the market, the government, uncertainty. Everybody just wants to be certain. But because that's happening, you have a lot of people that are either in the market like you, who just decided, I'm going to just be a free spirit right now and go find what I want because I didn't like where I was before. Or maybe there's other people that don't like where they're at right now because of a number of different factors and they're interested in looking. So what advice would you actually give companies trying to attract that top tier staffing talent?
So I think it's really is know who you are and who you want to be. And when you're talking to people, be very clear in your message of this is the organization that we are. This is our mission, our vision. This is what our goal is in the future, the direction that we're moving in, and be very straightforward with that, because I think people appreciate the honesty and they can get behind someone that they understand what that company is looking to do in the future. And they want to be a part of building something or going in a certain direction. And I think that's really important. And it's being fully transparent, like give the good, the bad, the ugly. I think that's important. And talk about the successes you've had in hiring and why you think this person might be a good fit for the organization. For me, it's been, I think, the more you communicate and share what you're looking for and hear what the potential candidate is looking for, you really find out, is it a match, or are we just hoping and praying that it might be a match? And we're doing everything we can to just slam this thing together and try to make it work. And we're gonna force it until it works. And that's not a good long-term strategy. Those very rarely
for anyone. Absolutely. Well, we are moving on to our rapid four, Rick, where we get to know a little bit more about you.
Yeah, the non-staffing Rick Frankovits.
Yes, the non-staffing Rick. But what's a show you can't stop binge watching right now?
So right now, my wife and I are watching Paradise.
Oh my God, you're like the third person to tell me.
Is it good?
It is really good. It starts out great and it just continues to get better and better.
Okay.
So a little alarming for today's time, but very good.
All right, maybe we'll have to get into it because there's a couple of things out right, like the Handmaid's Tale's back out, so we're watching that one. But,
I know, so good.
I love it. This is my favorite part because I get a lot of stuff to write down. And,
I know our own stuff selfishly.
All right, so what's one hobby or something you're currently passionate about? Like when you're not staffing, how does Rick unwind, or what does he do?
So I've got 4 kids and my family is so important to me. And I've got 3 of my children are older, through college and out in the working world now, which is great. And I've got a 13-year-old who is just such a great kid to hang out with and spend time with. And he plays football and he wrestles. So depending on whether it's wrestling season or football season, we do a lot of stuff as a family around sports. So my time, my personal time is a lot of it is spent with my family. And that to me is it's the reason I do what I do in life for profession. And it's my why for sure.
I love it.
That's awesome. Yeah. What's your go-to hype song when you need a little pick-me-up, Rick?
What's your playlist?
So that's a great question. There's so many songs out there. And I don't know that I have one in particular.
Yeah.
But I'll usually just jump on Spotify or Pandora and I'll just put hype songs and just throw something on.
Do you have a genre? Do you have a genre that you love? Like what's your genre that Rick Frank? Like are you country? Are you rap? Are you
I have very eclectic taste in music, everything from country to rap to R&B to soul to heavy metal.
Love it.
Yeah, it's across the board. Yeah, my playlists are just almost schizophrenic. It's crazy.
Same. Yeah, mine are not. There's no rhyme or reason for sure. Anybody that looks at mine might be concerned with my psychology. Well,
if I like the beat, I add it to the list.
Well, Rick, I am so grateful for you being here, and I'm going to ask you our final question. It is, what's something that you're grateful for right now in life that's just, you're like, I just want to say thank you, or put it out into the world?
So first of all, I want to say thank both of you for having me on the podcast. Oh. This is the first podcast I've ever done. I feel kind of famous right now.
Yeah, you did.
Is there an autograph session later on that I have to go to?
Yeah. There'll be autographs, and you are now you are required to show up every month for a podcast. Just joking. No.
No. So thank you very much for having me. I'm very appreciative of this. And again, I'm in a job search right now, so it's great to get my name out there and potentially people that might be interested in hearing about how I could add value to their organization. So that's important. And I think the one thing that I'm incredibly grateful to as well is my family, is just having 4 healthy children, an amazing wife who supports me in my job. And we all know this can be a crazy business to be in. And between the travel and the meetings and all the other things, she's just been so supportive. So my family by far has just been something I'm so blessed, and I feel so incredibly grateful for.
Well, I tell you what, Rick, I will put an emphasis on the fact that if anyone is looking to hire an amazing leader who can also produce, and I mean, I can't tell you, like, if I had to be a reference today, like, you are just somebody that the next company will be super lucky to bring on, because not only will you create fantastic teams, but you also attract solid talent to join the company. So it's a 2-for-1 that you get with Rick Frankovits. So thank you for being on the podcast, Rick. We are so grateful for you for joining. And
thanks.
Thanks
for Thank you.
Can't wait to see where you land. Yes. Remember, guys, share us, like us, get Rick out there, because this man is a stud and he is going to be an amazing next hire. Rick, we can't wait to see where you land. Thank you again. And we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Absolutely.